On this Topcon swing arm fixation assembly, sometimes you have to take it apart to get to service your lower assembly, or sometimes the receptacle is cracked. You need to take it apart. So there's a couple of Phillips screws right here. This is a rubber cover, and those two Phillips, they can stay in or come out, whatever. And underneath you have this little assembly where it's called a receptacle, and this fits right on to the chin rest and is screwed down by a couple of little screws. Then you have this disc that fits in the receptacle. And then you have this plate, this star spring plate that gives it the tension. And there's a screw that comes up from the underside, and this fits right on it. And then there's a nut, and when you're taking this nut off, it's probably going to have some type of glue or thread locker or something on there, because it's got a small set screw in it. And here I'm using a 1.2 by 40, and you would have to loosen that set screw. Then you could unscrew the nut, take it apart, replace it. And when you're putting it all back together, you would have your screw coming up. Well, I'll show it to you real quick. If your screw is already in, then it's already in. If not, you had to put it in. And then you have this receptacle, and it goes either way. It fits right on top of the screw. Make sure that screw was tight, screwing in to the chin rest. There's your receptacle, and then you're going to put two small screws on each side. Get them snug, not super tight, or you could crack the receptacle. Then you would have this disc, and it's got a raised edge on it, and that's where your star spring plate rests, on the inner ridge, not the very bottom, but there's like three surfaces. There's flat, and then there's raised one, and then the top. So it's going to go right, and it's going to fit right inside that ridge, so it will be able to turn. And when we put this down, because this was already tight originally, it has pushed this spring fairly flat, and you might want to push it out a little bit so that it's raised, so that when you're screwing down the nut, it will push this plate down tighter on here. And one way you could do it, either you could, with your fingers, you could just press it in, or you can get your pliers and bend each little fin a little bit. Now we've put a little bit of more spring action in this spring, so when we tighten it down, it will put a little more tension on the swing. You want a little bit of tension. You don't want the arm flipping around so easily. We're going to put our disc in. And when we put the star in, we're going to make sure that we don't cover our two holes where our screws that are coming through here again will be able to screw into the disc. So it's going to want to fall down. You just have to pick it up and get it onto that middle ridge. And put your nut on. Don't lose the set screw, which is right here. Wow, that is really small. That's a small set screw. And when you're screwing it down, make sure your plate is staying on the appropriate ridge, and make sure you're not covering up the holes. And screw it down and get your pliers and tighten it up. Now, you don't want to get it completely tight, because then it will be too tight. So what you could do is just go all, until it goes all the way down. And now that it's tight, then back off a little bit. Just a slight release, so that it will still be able to turn. Otherwise it would be too hard to turn. So that's kind of a judgment call. You might get it too loose or too tight. That's just what I've found, that if you just tighten it and then release it a little bit, that should be good enough. And then once you have it where you like it and you're not covering up your holes, then you need to tighten up your set screw wherever it's at. And when it's tight, you might want to put a little fingernail polish or something right on that set screw so that it won't come out, won't work itself out. And when you're putting your swing arm back on, line the holes up, and remember the arm goes on the other side of the headband. And these screws you'll want to get tight. And then you can test it to see how strong your tension is. If it's too loose, you might need to take it off and tighten that nut a little more. If it's too tight, the same thing, you'll take everything off and loosen the nut a little bit and then tighten it back down tighten your set screw back down and then try it. So if you wanted to see a diagram, we have our receptacle, the disc, the star plate spring, the nut, and the set screw. And then this is the flange. And then these screws go up through this cover into here. And here are some part numbers. Here's the bottom, in case you wanted to see that. Now that's the old style. The newer style doesn't have these type of flanges. They've got a different kind, and to replace it, you'd have a different setup. You'd have something like this, where you have a flange pipe going in to here, here, and that's the pipe holder, and then you have the holder up top. You have a screw going in here with a washer, and so it would be something like this. So you'd have your flange pipe, and you'd be inserting it into the holder, putting a screw through there, and then you'd be mounting this on your chin rest. It's got the little indentation and the screw, and then you'd be mounting this, and your wire would go through here, through this hole. So this is like a replacement if these things get broken, or the newest style. So this is the newer style. And I'll show you the part numbers for these. I hope that helps.